Hey everyone, and welcome back. Today we're diving into this idea of a BRICS currency and what it could mean for, the US dollar. We've got some news articles and some expert analysis to break down. Should be interesting.
Yeah, it's really gotten people talking, that's for sure. Especially with everything else going on in the world right now.
It really has. And, we got to start with this. Former President Trump, he basically said he threatened 100% tariffs on any BRICS nation that tries to move away from the dollar for trade.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and he actually said this, quote, "They can go find another sucker.
Wow.
There is no chance that the BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade, and any country that tries should wave goodbye to America." Strong words.
Yeah, that's pretty intense. I mean, it shows you how important, how much the U.S. wants to keep the dollar on top. But is that really, is that a real threat, or is it more just, trying to scare people? And, does it even matter? Is there even a real plan for BRICS currency?
That's the big question, right? Like, what's the reality here? We've got India's External Affairs Minister, S. Jaishankar, and the Reserve Bank of India Governor, Shaktikanta Das. Both of them have said, basically, no proposal for a BRICS currency right now.
Okay, so where does that leave us?
Well, that's what we're going to figure out.
All right. It seems like, I think it's important to understand, what are the motivations here? Even if there's no, official plan right now, just talking about a BRICS currency, it tells us that things are changing globally.
Yeah.
Right. We've got the BRICS nations, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa. They're a powerful group, and they're gaining more and more influence. Plus, they just added Egypt, Ethiopia, Iran, and the United Arab Emirates.
Wow. Yeah, they're a force to be reckoned with, that's for sure. So what's driving this talk then, even if it's just an idea at this point?
Well, put yourself in the shoes of a country that uses the dollar for, almost all their international trade. They're kind of stuck, right? Whatever the U.S. does with its economy, with the dollar, it affects them. A BRICS currency, if it worked, it could change that. They'd be more independent, more stable maybe.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially with, how crazy the markets are these days.
Exactly. It's all about not putting all your eggs in one basket. It's about having more control over your own economy, your own future. And a BRICS currency could also mean more trade, more cooperation between those countries, so they'd have even more power together,
So it's not just about the money itself, it's about, global power shifting, right? But what about India specifically, since we're kind of focused on India's perspective here?
Yeah, India's in a very interesting spot. They're part of BRICS, and they're definitely looking at other ways to do things financially. But they also have this big relationship with the U.S., economically, strategically. It's a balancing act.
A tightrope walk, for sure.
Yeah, exactly. Indian officials have said, de-dollarization is certainly not our objective.
Yeah.
Their focus seems to be more on, making deals with specific countries to trade, using their own currencies, not just the dollar. It's not about getting rid of the dollar completely, but it's about managing risk.
Yeah.
Not being so vulnerable to what happens in the U.S.,
So more like building a stronger, more balanced financial, portfolio for India?
Exactly. And it makes you think, right? If India, with its close ties to the U.S., is doing this, what does that say about where the whole global system is headed? What could this mean? The good and the bad.
Yeah.
Not just for India, but for other economies too, like your economy, for example.
Those are some really good questions. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Is the dollar really in danger? We hear all the time about how strong it is, how stable it is.
Right. It's the big question. The dollar has basically run the global financial system for forever. It's what most international trade is based on.
However, at that recent BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia, symbolic BRICS banknote, and they officially said they're all for using their own currencies for trade between them. Does that mean something?
It's definitely a bold move. It's hard to say if this is the beginning of the end for the dollar, but you can't ignore it. Alternatives are popping up, even if they're just starting out. The whole scene is getting more complex. You can't really predict what's going to happen with currencies for sure.
It's like a tug of war,
Right.
The dollar on one side, all powerful, but on the other side, you have this push for something new, like with this BRICS currency talk.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And it's not just about, these big countries, the US, the BRICS, this whole idea of having lots of important currencies. That could change everything about global finance.
Oh, right. This isn't just some theory, right? It could affect everyone listening. So, what would that world actually look like for us normal people? There were all these different currencies running things.
Okay, imagine this. Instead of the dollar being king, international trade uses a bunch of currencies. Maybe a BRICS currency is one of them. Or think about digital currencies, like central bank digital currencies. Those could become really important for global transactions.
So, like, if I went on vacation, I might need to have, like, a bunch of different currencies in my wallet.
Maybe. But think about the advantages. If one currency is doing badly, you've got others to fall back on. Like having different investments, so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. It could actually make things more stable.
Huh. Interesting. So it's not all bad, but businesses would have to, like, adapt, right, to all this complexity. Imagine having to rewrite contracts, change payment systems, all that.
Definitely. There would be some growing pains, for sure. But that also means opportunities.
Yeah.
The companies that figure this out first, they could really come out ahead.
Winners and losers. Just like with any big change. What about for, like, our personal finances?
Right.
Savings, investments, all that.
That's where it gets really interesting. You might want to think about investing in different currencies, not just sticking to one. Because if one goes down, you've got others that might go up, right? It's all about protecting yourself, especially in a world with lots of powerful currencies.
Sounds like we'd all need to become, like, global investors.
Yeah.
Paying attention to all these different markets.
Exactly. The more you know, the better off you'll be, especially as things change so fast. Understanding what's happening with global finance, it's essential for making good decisions for your financial future.
And that's what we're all about here, right? Giving you the knowledge to understand these complicated topics.
This topic especially makes you think about the systems that run the world and what happens when they change, the good and the bad.
Yeah, it's not about knowing exactly what's going to happen. It's about understanding what could happen, all the different possibilities.
Right. Global finance is constantly evolving, and where it goes next, it affects all of us.
So with that in mind, let's get into some specifics. In the last part of our deep dive, we'll explore how these potential shifts might impact you directly. All right, so we've been talking about this BRICS currency and what it could mean for the dollar. But now let's look ahead, like what could really happen with global currencies? What's the future look like?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say for sure, right? There's so many things that could happen. But I guess we could look at some possibilities, like what if the BRICS, what if they actually launch their own currency? How would that even work?
Well, they're already saying they want to use their own currencies for trade with each other. So maybe that just keeps growing, more and more transactions happening without the dollar.
Right, it would probably happen gradually. And maybe they'd even like create a BRICS central bank to manage the currency, make sure everyone's on the same page, which is important because their economies are all pretty different, you know.
And they'd have to decide, like, how much is this new currency worth? Would they tie it to, like, gold or other commodities? That seems like a big deal for how stable it'll be, how much other countries will want to use it.
Absolutely. How they decide to value it, that's a huge decision. Lots of pros and cons to think about. Inflation, volatility, all that. They'd have to figure out what their goals are economically.
So let's say, just for fun, that this BRICS currency actually takes off. People start using it all over the world. What happens to the dollar then? The dollar's been on top for so long.
Well, it could mean that slowly the world moves away from the dollar. If other countries see this BRICS currency as a good alternative, especially if they're not that happy with the U.S., the dollar would have some real competition.
So we might end up with a world where, like, multiple currencies are important, not just the dollar, including this new BRICS one, a truly, what is that word, multipolar.
Multipolar, exactly, yeah. It would be way more complicated than what we're used to. No single currency calling all the shots.
And what would that mean for, like, regular people? Traveling, buying stuff, even just, like, saving money?
Well, for one thing, the exchange rates, those might change a lot more. So if you travel or buy something from another country, it's harder to know how much it'll cost.
So even just going to the store or planning a vacation, it'd be more complicated.
Yeah, you'd really have to pay attention to what your money's worth in different places. Think about all those different currencies.
Okay, so that's one possibility. The BRICS currency becomes a big deal. But what if the dollar stays strong? Like, it survives all this.
That could happen too. But even then, it's not like the dollar won't have any challenges. You've got other currencies, especially from like whole regions of the world getting stronger. And then there's digital currencies. That's a whole other thing to think about.
Oh yeah, digital currencies. We haven't even gotten to that. Lots of countries are looking into making their own digital money. That could change everything.
For sure. Digital currencies could change how we pay for things completely, make it faster, cheaper, more efficient.
But there are downsides too, right? Like privacy, security. Could governments have even more control over our money?
Definitely. It's a powerful tool, And how governments decide to use it, that's going to be really important. It'll determine how quickly digital currencies become mainstream and what kind of impact they have.
So basically, we've got these two big scenarios. Either the dollar stays king but has to deal with more competition, or we enter this multipolar world with a BRICS currency shaking things up. What do you think will happen?
It's hard to say. But here's the thing. Global finance is changing right now. We're seeing power shift. We're seeing new technology that could change everything. What happens next depends on what governments do, what businesses do, and what we all do as individuals.
And like you always say, the more we understand, the better choices we can make for ourselves, our communities.
Exactly. This isn't just some abstract economic theory. It's about money, how we use it, how we interact with the world. It's about the future.
Well said. Well, I think that about wraps up our deep dive for today. We talked about this BRICS currency idea, the future of the dollar, and all the big changes happening in global finance. It's a lot to take in, but hopefully you found it interesting.
And remember, knowledge is power. Keep learning, keep asking questions, keep these important conversations going.
Until next time, deep divers.